when time passes, when situation changes, and then there are these things. So that layers of dukkha, which we human beings, if we think, in a little bit depth, or if we contemplate, or if we pay close attention, we will understand. Yes, these are desirable, but these are not, something long term, to be, collected or to be, enjoyed. Sooner or later, these will give me pain and difficulties. If we pay attention, if we contemplate, we can understand that. And that is the slightly different, compared to the first one, subtler as a dukkha, but what you call not that difficult to understand as a dukkha. And that's happening in our lives. It's happening in our physical body, it's happening in our mental level. Our bodies, our physical shapes, colors, everything. If we pay attention, there is that kind of, processes. And if you look at in our mental level, exactly the same. Certain our feelings, certain our, the attitudes, our experiences, initially very pleasant, very, enjoyable. If we spend more time, no, we want to move, want to move away from that particular way of thinking, particular way of experiencing, and so on and so forth. So the second one. And the third one, dukkha, as a conditioned state, and that is here very, very difficult to us to understand as a dukkha. The third layers here, this master, he said dukkha as conditioned states, or sometimes it is translated saying pervasive dukkha, pervasive suffering, pervasive. So because I'm using this master's, translation, dukkha as conditioned states. So, in other words, our existence, this life, present life, which is conditioned in other states, conditioned existence. So that is not that easy to understand as a dukkha. It is not saying whole our life is dukkha, but same time what it's saying here is actually existence itself is dukkha. That the existence that we have itself is dukkha, because it is conditioned states. Now, think that the other term that I use, saying pervasive dukkha, pervasive suffering, pervasive dukkha or pervasive suffering, and that is the term which literal translation, which quite often we use in the Tibetan tradition, pervasive suffering. If I look at the so here His Holiness, the text here translated, there says this: 3 types of suffering. So now the question is, what is dukkha? What is suffering? Buddhism describes 3 levels or types of suffering. The first is called the suffering of suffering. The second, the suffering of change. The third is suffering of, or here there is suffering of conditioning. Suffering of conditioning. So this third one. Finally, we come to the third type of suffering, the suffering of conditioning. This addresses the main question: why? Why is this the nature? Why is this nature of things? Why is this nature of things? The answer is because everything that happens in samsara is due to ignorance, or the other reason, which is a little bit better clear to understand, under the influence or control of ignorance. And that is here which conditioned states. Now, this existence that we have, from the Buddhist viewpoint, this existence that we have is a result of delusion and actions committed under the influence of those delusions. I'll repeat that again. This existence that we have, this physical and the mental, what's called the combination of physical and mental, the states, that existence that we have is a result of delusion. Here they use ignorance, I will use delusion, and actions, or karma in Buddhist term, actions which are motivated by those delusions. And that is here talking about conditioned states. Conditioned in the sense of under the influence, under the power of these two, delusion and actions which are committed under the influence of those delusions. So this is here, this existence is result of those two. Now that result itself is dukkha, is suffering. And understanding of that as a dukkha, then it is not that straightforward, it takes time. Then that understanding, if we have that understanding, then going for refuge to the Buddha, going for refuge to the 3 jewels will be extremely helpful when you have that understanding. The third levels of dukkha. When Buddha said there is a dukkha, so when we say there's a dukkha, there is a dukkha and the suffering of suffering. There's a suffering, the second layer, the suffering of change. And the third layer, the suffering of conditioning. So that, but here mainly the third one, the suffering of conditioning, or this master used the suffering dukkha as a conditioned state, conditioned nature states in the sense of result of the existence that I have is result of or under the power, under the influence of delusion and actions, karma, actions in the sense of actions which are motivated by that delusions. So that understanding, when you have that understanding, then that understanding will, motivate us, cause us to go for refuge. So that is the a brief, explanation on the first course. Out of 2 courses, to go for refuge, to have the mind go for refuge. The first course, to understand nature of our existence, and to understand nature of our existence fully and completely, to understand these 3 types of dukkha, suffering is here. There's a dukkha, Buddha said, and to understand these different kinds, different layers of dukkha is here. And that understanding, if we have that understanding, particularly in this case, the third levels of dukkha, understanding of the 3rd levels of dukkha, that understanding will, help us to go for refuge. Therefore, the First Noble Truth is extremely helpful for the, to have the mind going for refuge. Okay, now I will briefly explain the second course, that is understanding Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Now this term Buddha, first we will look at the 3 terms briefly, term itself. Buddha, which is Sanskrit term, this term refers to 2 or 3, has 2 or 3 different meanings, but if we look at it, 2 meanings, 2 connotations. It has a connotation of, the awaken, when we sleep, and we awake from sleeping, or sleep, awake. And the second connotation is increase or open. For example, when the lotus bud, it opens, become full lotus. So it also have this kind of connotation, open or increase. So 2 connotations, Buddha in Sanskrit, Buddha. It has a connotation of awaken, also connotation of increase or open, full, complete open. That's a connotation, or etymology, the term. Now, in Tibetan, it is very interesting. When Buddha, the Sanskrit term, is translated into Tibetan, then the translator put 2 syllables, sang, ge. As this morning we read, didn't we? That verse we read, sang, ge, as you can see in your prayer book. These 2 syllables captures, the 2 different connotations in Sanskrit. Sang in Tibetan, sang literally it means, what you call awaken, sang. Ge in Tibetan, ge, literally it means increase. So the 2 meanings, they bring together in Tibetan, sangye. So, the awaken